Hi, everybody, and welcome. It's the end of another week, man. The Friday edition of Moohead Radio. I'm your host, a big and furry bovine. We've got Jake and Tony and Brian and Rick and Rox in studio today, which is great having all my friends here. I wanted to take the top of this show just to editorialize for a minute. And this is not, I want to repeat, not going to be a political discussion. This is not a Republican Democrat thing. I I got to thinking about some things. I remember when I was a kid, my mom and dad used to tell me about what life was like living post depression in America. They didn't hit the actual depression, um, but and then the war years. And it's interesting. Government back in the post-depression times, and Franklin Roosevelt infused the system with work, with jobs. I mean, the job works bills that were infrastructure related, so that men and women could work and everything from the Tennessee Valley Authority to the infrastructure of roads and bridges in America, people were put back to work during a very difficult time in history. And then when the war came up, everything changed completely. And, what my folks would tell me about was what it was like really growing up in the war years and the sacrifice, hi Topaz, and the sacrifices that people made. You know, uh, there was no butter, there was margarine, okay? And these are just small examples of things. Uh, Automobiles weren't needed. So steel got diverted from automotive plants that weren't needed because all the men were overseas or, fighting a war for our freedom. Uh, so steel got redirected for munitions and to help the military win the war because they were fighting against oppressive regimes, the Japanese and the Germans. And I don't need to go over a basic primer of history, but what people forget about or don't know about in today's generation is the sacrifices that all Americans were willing to make for the greater good back then. And the notion of making America great again, and I'm using a slogan of a politician, I understand. I'm watching television now and I'm seeing with my own eyes some things that are really startling. In the old days, we could change directions. If we didn't need the steel for automotive, we would divert that steel. If we needed something else manufactured, we would be able to step over and do that. If we needed more munitions, plants changed operation schedules in order to start making munitions instead of making other things that people didn't need. Likewise, when the war was over, things started being made that were consumer goods. Everything changed after the war. The post war boom, okay, was all predicated on the sacrifice that Americans made. And the sacrifice was predicated on less today, more tomorrow. And it was when the birth of the expression, the American dream, because with it came a lot of things. When the men came back from the war, jobs were available. Production was ramped up in factories. New factories sprung up. Consumer goods became more significant. Automotive sales went through the roof. And the jobs that were created were good jobs. They were jobs in factories where people were paid benefits as well as dollars and cents. And it was a life where every American's great dream was to move to the suburbs because the suburbs were created because of the general well being and the financial boom in America. And all because of sacrifices that were made, the great society of America came to pass. The color TV, owning a home, paying off your mortgage, retiring, having a good retirement settlement, and a good, happy retirement. This was our parents' generation. Making America great again started with sacrifice. But you know something? There's a lot of things that are happening today that are making me shake my head. Hospitals don't have the requisite equipment to deal with sick people. Simple things like masks are being substituted with bandanas. Hospital people are afraid to speak out, but they're being exposed to potential lethal disease because we can't come up with the goods. And I was sitting and talking earlier about this, and it sits badly with me. We can't divert things anymore. There was a time when the sacrifice that Americans would make would be, well, we'll just, we got to start creating more sanitizer, more masks, whatever our medical people need to disinfect. We've got to stop the progress of this virus. But we can't do it anymore. And the reason is we don't make very much here anymore. All of those factories that were part of the post-war boom are closed. We don't manufacture things. We rely on others to manufacture them for us. And now we end up in a crisis where simple things like hygienic products and masks are being manufactured in the country which was ground zero for the virus. You want to go on Amazon and see that they can't tell you when they're going to ship something. They can't even tell you when something's going to be in stock again. And the reason is they have no control over it. Back in the day, we would get munitions out to our military because we had schedules we had to make. We had to supply the American public with automobiles, transportation. That infrastructure and the roads and the bridges that got built boomed out into interstate highways. And suddenly the country was connected by ground, and then air travel became more prolific. But now we don't manufacture very much, and we have to wait. The Chinese closed their factories down because their people were dying from this. The bottom line is this: if you don't control your own fate, how can you say your country is great? America is not great anymore. This is not a make America great again scenario. What this is trying to get America back to being America. And it starts with creating things at home. It starts with a government that works for people, not against them. It's where corporations pay money into the system instead of just taking out of the system. This isn't Bernie Sanders economics. I'm all for capitalism, but that isn't what's happening. This world economy, while people speculate and make money, I was talking to a person from Wall Street earlier who said day traders are making a ton of money right now. Like, I give a fuck. There's people dying out there. Why would we be happy about this? If you want to make America great again, put the men and women in America back to work in meaningful jobs. Let them earn benefits. Let their health benefits be covered. Let's tax everybody at a flat rate equally so that we go back to the Constitution to prove that all men are created equal and that people are willing to contribute into the system as well as take out of it. I'm all for making America great again. The problem is what I see with my eyes is in stark contradiction to what my mother and father told me just a generation ago. And that's too fucking soon for this to be happening. It hurts. And all I can tell you is, I don't know exactly what the answer to this is, but I know that the answer to this isn't going to come from legislation with the men and women who are in our Congress right now, of either party. That this whole system slipped away from this post-war boom into what we have today with the help of both political parties, the Republicans and the Democrats. Ronald Reagan and Bill Clinton might as well have been Siamese twins separated at birth. They took us down the same road. And that road is we are no longer self sufficient. I'm not worried about protecting myself from my neighbors and building walls. I want to protect myself from the assholes who took our jobs away from us and all of our manufacturing capacity. It almost looks like a plot. We can't help ourselves. And now we're being held hostage by a sick and cruel world. The last thing I want to say, the people who sacrificed in the post-Depression years and in the war years, they didn't say things like, well, if I get COVID, I get COVID. Nothing's going to stop me from partying. Americans have become soft. Americans are not special. The Germans thought they were special. And that's how they got talked into the Third Reich. Because bad luck hit them. They lost a war. Their economy inflated to hell. And it took somebody to try to talk it up. Did they become great? No. It was a history of shame for Germany that they haven't lived down since. This is the hardest part of this, is that as Americans, we have become complacent and soft. Our possessions are more important than our principles. And we've got to get that reversed to make America great again. And the principles are the greater good comes first. And our personal wealth comes second and hopefully later because of the sacrifice that we made today. All right, I'm done. All right, I'm going to take this banner off so that people aren't going to skin me. All right. So I want to start the program by going with each of the people who are taking their time out on the panel.
Well, I'm gonna jump in here because, pardon my French, I'll go first because I've got a point to add on to your monologue there. It's a sad day in hell when we as a country need a bailout from the government. And that's all you're seeing in Congress right now is, oh, the Democrats want $2,000 a month pre-check. Nope, the Republicans want $1,200. And I'm like, how about making it so employers can't let go of their employees? Like right. I work in the airlines, and I'm not gonna lie, we're hurting. Like we're down 70% capacity because of this coronavirus. And I'm not going to lose my job in reservations because we're considered deemed essential because somebody's got to be there to answer the phones when it booms back up again. But I fear for my colleagues who are pilots, flight attendants, baggage handlers, airport ticket agents. These people are going to be without jobs because they're going to be the first ones to go. You're going to let them sit there on rot on $800 a month in unemployment?
$1,200 fucking dollars is a month's rent. It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah,
that is appeasement.
I pay 11.
That's pandering.
Yeah, that would cover my rent, and that would be it.
You can pay a prostitute $1,200. $1,200 isn't going to help anybody in today's society. What's going to help is what we do later down the road. And while people are getting rich and price gouging in the pharmaceutical company and God knows where else, real people are going to suffer. Now, Jake, I want to go back to you. How are things where you are in Ohio? What is the vibe as far as the virus is concerned?
I mean, I kind of like working from home, so I'm kind of selfish in saying that, but I kind of like working from home and not having to go to the office, so I'm not really complaining about it right now.
Right. I mean, but from Ohio has been very proactive in shutting things down. And some states more so than others, and now others are, of course, following that lead because things are getting a bit worse. Do you find your lifestyle being impacted in any meaningful way?
I mean, not really. I was not really much of I always bought stuff in bulk anyway, so it didn't really matter to me much. But I mean, I think Ohio did it the right way. To be honest, they handled it the best way they could. So, but overall, I just work 8 hours a day from here instead of the office. That's all that's really changed for me.
Right. Brian, what do you think? What is your world like? How are you? How is the general health in the area in which you're living?
It's definitely changed. It's weird driving past movie theaters and things that are normally relatively full, absolutely shut down. Grocery stores with empty shelves that normally they're having specials to get rid of the inventory. Even the 99-cent store or the dollar store is getting ramshackled, and they're usually taking the overflow from all of the major chain grocery stores that we have here. Because we do have one local grocer, Bashas'. You may remember Eddie Basha from political different things, but they're actually one of the few chains that's trying to adjust things. Like, for instance, they're open from 6 until 8 a.m. specifically for anyone over 55.
Right.
To help them avoid crowds. They do all of their overnight stocking so that whatever they got, that's what they got at the beginning of the day. And then they're closed for 2 hours from 8 until 10 to do another restock of whatever they've got. And then,
I remember something
open it to the general public.
From my younger years, and when I say my younger years, I'm not talking about when I was a kid. I'm talking about in the 1980s when the great line that was being spouted around Washington is, we're the United States, we're not Russia. We don't have to wait online for necessities. I was standing at a Walmart waiting in a line for toilet paper today. And the line was moving pretty readily, quickly. And when I got up to the front, there were two different kinds of toilet paper that were being distributed and being sold. They weren't being given away. They were being sold. And one was Scott and the other one was Angel Soft. Those are the two brands. And, when it's on you real quick, you say, which one's the 2-ply, which one's the 1-ply? Because my fat ass ain't going to work with 1-ply, okay?
I don't like the finger in the butt when I'm trying to wipe.
Exactly. I mean, it's one thing, and just use my hand, Yeah. So I asked, but they were far enough away from me that you couldn't discern. I said, which one's 1-ply and which one's 2-ply? And in the instant that I asked a question, the woman who was standing behind me elbows me in the ribs, goes around me, and says, I'll take the Scott, and grabs it out of the person's hand. And I turned to her and I said, you go ahead, cunt. And then I turned around and I said, now, which one is 1-ply? Which one is 2-ply? All right. But where is the sacrifice in our society? I mean, first of all, we are Russia. Don't we get it by now? We're waiting on the Chinese for our inventory control. We are a communist country, whether we want to admit it or not. We're waiting on the communists to provide our shit for us, and we don't have it. And we can't answer questions. Our people, our authority people, can't answer questions because we're waiting. It's really scary. Rick, how is all this affecting you?
Oh, you just have to exercise some patience, a little civility. God knows common sense always comes in handy.
You mean calling her a cunt was the wrong thing to do? No, no, the fact is, who elbows somebody for a 6-pack of toilet paper when there's a wall full of them? They're not trying to prevent you from getting them. They're rationing them so that people won't hoard them.
They're probably just practicing for Black Friday when it rolls around. So
yeah. No, I think Walmart was doing a great job with it.
But our primary election was postponed. We were scheduled to vote this past Tuesday. They've moved it back to June. Um, Everything just sort of is slowly just getting, pushed back a little bit more. But I'm noticing, at least around where I'm at, there's a little bit more civility going on. If I go into a store every now and then, and it's not like people have this wild look in their eye, like, oh, if you're in my way, sorry about your luck. But they're being a little bit more civil about it. The strangest thing was when I drove to Sandusky the other day, and I looked over at the Sandusky Mall, and it looked like a ghost town. You can count the number of cars in the parking lot on maybe both hands. That's about it.
All right, and Rox, tell us, how has this affected you?
Well, I kind of have my finger on the pulse of a couple of different cities right now. And that's Tulsa, Oklahoma, and here in Sarasota. Things have not been going exactly the way that I had envisioned because of, I came here right on the heels of the virus, so of a worldwide pandemic. So I'm having issues such as getting my car down here. Never in my life have I counted the squares of toilet paper that I'm using, but everything is being rushed, and it's like, okay, I guess I better use cloth towels instead of paper towels these days. So that's kind of how it's affecting me.
Yeah, it's a comeuppance for sure. And I think, without bandying political slogans, and we'll get them from both sides, the bottom line is you either, as Sam Bertigliano said, control your own destiny, or you don't. And if you don't, you have to take whatever is given you. Let's get to sports. The Cleveland Browns have done what would be considered a really good job in the free agency market. And, it's interesting because to me, it's a two-pronged thing. There's free agency, of course, and then there's the draft. But even within free agency, you have to identify your need first before you figure out what you're going to get. And I think that for all the concern about Andrew Berry, I think that they have identified the needs of the team a lot better than the outgoing bunch of people did. And, whether they're going to get the right players and whether these free agents are the right people, let's start with what was terminated. Morgan Burnett, terminated. All right. Christian Kirksey, who found himself, a job, if you want to call it that. Where did Kirksey go?
Packers.
Green Bay.
$8 million a year or something. It was a solid contract for someone who's injury prone.
Yeah, I mean, he came out okay. Darius Taylor, who I doubt will miss. Eric Kush, who's probably still holding on to something. Demetrius Harris, we dropped him and he dropped us because he dropped everything while he was here. TJ Carey, so these people are gone. And then, of course, Joe Schobert, who was, not tendered in any way. And, it's funny because Schobert got a good deal. Yeah, 5 years, $53 million, but to play in hell, to play in Hades. I mean, to play in a place where you're never going to win. I mean, but God bless him. He got what he needed financially, but he ain't going to win there. That's for damn sure. That's reserved for a select few. But I agree with who we got rid of. And then when you look at our free agent signings, you cannot argue with Hooper at the tight end position, with Conklin at the right tackle. You can't complain about Case Keenum. And again, the poor get poorer. The Giants have Daniel Jones, and now they've got Colt McCoy to back him up. I mean, you might as well just say, if Daniel Jones shits the rug, which there's a real chance he's going to do, Colt McCoy can't win in the league, and he can't stay healthy for more than 1 or 2 weeks without going down. And that whole situation is prevalent around the league. So getting Case Keenum, no, it's not the most exciting thing in the world, but it's at least a solid professional to back up our starting quarterback. B.J. Goodson, the linebacking, I like the idea of getting some vets in because our two guys, Takataki and Wilson, we don't know which way the road's going to go on these folks. We really don't. And with Schobert gone, so we got ourselves B.J. Goodson. Is it worth a deal? It's 1 year. And that tells me every position we're filling with a 1 year, I believe we are going to draft that position in the upcoming draft. So it gives us an idea strategically of what they're doing. The same thing, a 1 year deal with Carl Joseph, formerly with the Raiders as a safety. We are weak in our secondary. I mean, my goodness, a secondary that has only Sheldrick Redwine and J.T. Hassel, who is a practice squad guy. Joseph is not a high-line player. I mean, he had 4 picks in 4 seasons. It's not that he made a lot of plays, but it's a 1 year deal, and they're going to draft that position. Andrew Billings coming over from the Bengals. Look, we need depth. We've got Richardson, we've got Ogunjobi, and you need to start building depth because we've seen a defensive lineman go down. He was a 4th round pick out of Baylor. He missed his 2016 rookie season with a knee injury, but only a 1 year deal. But, all of this stuff means that we're going to be drafting. You can see the direction the organization is gonna go. Kevin Johnson, not the wide receiver, the cornerback.
Hope it's not the wide receiver.
That's right. Well, you never know. I think he's going to the Giants. Johnson is a guy with injury history, which is difficult. I mean, but again, you need bodies. You got Denzel Ward. You've got Greedy Williams. You've got to have people behind him. You got rid of T.J. Carey, so you got to, you promote a guy like Kevin Johnson, and you hope that 2016 and 2018 don't repeat themselves. He played 6 games in 2016 and in only 1 game in 2018 due to a concussion, and that's not a real good sign. And then Andrew Sendejo, another safety, formerly with Tony's team, the Vikings, who are cutting costs at all.
Oh, fuck, don't get me started.
I know. It's the rebuild.
The rumors are you guys are going to get another one of our guys, Anthony Harris. Now, I've heard anywhere from a 3rd or 2nd round pick to fucking Jarvis Landry as the compensation. So,
so Harris hasn't moved yet.
No, he signed his franchise tender, and last update they were discussing a deal with Cleveland.
Yeah,
but nothing else has come out.
It would make sense, and they're going to have to pay for it. I mean, and some of those draft picks are going to get thrown over to the Vikings side. Sendejo's 32 years old. He's been a pretty good coverage guy, though he's long in the tooth,
And he can hit like nobody's fucking business.
Yeah, he's a sledgehammer. But again, a 1 year deal. We've got a draft. You can't live with with 32-year-olds. And we'll start with Tony, seeing as how we seem to be becoming. We seem to be becoming more like the Vikings, which kind of scares the shit out of me personally. But obviously,
Stefanski.
Yeah, that's all Stefanski. We got Jankowski, the fullback. We've got extra tight end now. You see the thing starting to build. A blocking fullback and a 2 tight end scheme. The things that he promoted.
The 2 pass catching tight ends like we had with Kyle Rudolph and Herb Smith. You're gonna get that in Njoku and. What the hell's the name of the guy they just signed?
Hooper. Yeah. I mean, so that's going to, so I think the league isn't going to have to watch too much film on the Browns because just watch the Vikings last year. As for Zimmer now, the coach of the Vikings, it makes you wonder what direction they're going in besides cutting, the changes in, as they lose personnel, they have to assemble an identity. And it'll be interesting to see what they do offensively compared to what Stefanski was doing when he was with the Vikings. So can't argue though that the guys that we got, Tony, would you say that they're reasonable players?
I think the Browns have done pretty well getting some depth. Are any of them going to be world beaters when it comes to oh my God, he's a superstar, give him a Pro Bowl? Probably not. But you got some good depth there, and for a team that was it 6-10 last year, 5-11, something like that.
Yeah, 6-10.
Yes, man. You cannot have enough depth. So hopefully, this virus is over and the league is still operating come October, and
Yeah. And now we'll go over to Jake. Do you think so far we've identified some of the problems?
Definitely, and I think we've gotten younger as well doing it. The tackle we signed from the Bengals, he's not a finishing type player, but he does create space. He's not going to really get numbers for you. But if we get a decent linebacker, which I'm guessing that's going to be the draft now, I'd imagine we're probably going to take a linebacker first round and then try to fill the line out. I think he's very effective. I really like that we actually signed a kick returner instead of a receiver trying to make a kick returner. And I hope we can fill out, if we go through with the trade, our remaining draft picks and get some players that can help the team. I think we definitely need corner help and definitely need linebacker help on top of the line still. But if we can fill two of those out, it's a great offseason.
I don't know if JoJo Natson means anything, former University of Akron guy, but again, it's an organization that realizes that you can't have Dontrell Hilliard returning punts.
You have to have someone who's done it before.
That's right.
A lot of the times you put these players in who are good athletes, they never had to do it because they played everything else. So
and you can't put Jarvis Landry in a suicide.
He's not fast. He can't run.
Well, he's going to get hurt, and you need him someplace else far more with what he's good at. JoJo Natson is a guy who averaged at least 7.8 yards per punt return, so at least he's done it before. And small thing, but it makes me feel better as a fan that the things that I was screaming about last season, is like, how in the hell can we have the world's slowest people who don't know how to follow blocking schemes returning kicks?
And it's not easy to catch a punt. People think if you're a receiver, you can catch a punt. No, it's hard to catch a punt in the NFL.
Yeah.
The ball goes like this on purpose. The kickers can spin it and make it knuckleball on you.
And people are bearing down on you, not from the side or from behind you, but directly in front of you. It is a completely different thing. Brian, you feel comfortable with where the organization is heading so far?
Actually, yes. They've done a much better job than I was expecting. I was expecting them to do another 2016 fire sale where we end up with a one-win team. So from the standpoint of they're actually going out, spending some money, getting some maybe not A-plus talent, but at least B-level talent to augment what they've already got, and to maybe allow them to trim some more fat away from the core of the team. Then, we'll see what happens with the draft. But now, with the signing of these tackles, it gives them more flexibility at 10.
All right. And Rick, you happy so far? I know it's early, but can you see a pattern developing as far as what we're going to be looking for in the draft?
Yeah, I think this time around they're getting players that they need. They're not trying to do some fancy Dan trade just to see if they can make the biggest splash. That's what last year seemed to be. We were trying to look for name players when we should have been just happy trying to get good players. We seem to be getting back to the direction we're supposed to be heading in with what we've done so far with these free agents. Now it's up to the powers that be to see how well we do in the draft, and if they have a specific purpose in mind and whether they follow through on that.
I know I'm going to live to regret this, but
Saving the best for last.
yeah.
Roxanne. Dun, dun.
Da, 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 da.
I am hopeful and optimistic about the changes that are occurring.
Right off the teleprompter, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, they weren't even selling generic toilet paper at Walmart. Jeez, that was a real,
Thank you, Hillary Clinton.
yeah, that was like a generated response, one of those automatic generated responses. Outstanding.
Our off season was indeed titanium, Jake.
Don't,
Oh,
Jake.
God,
You can wear your welcome out, my friend, if you keep suggesting such things. Now, here's one. I'm looking around, our division, and Eric Ebron signed with the Steelers. Who is the guy who was receiving all the passes last year?
Vance McDonald?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, Ebron came from the Lions. It's a 2-year, $12 million deal. And he had a real problem, in Indianapolis. He decided he was going to, after an ankle injury, shut it down. And of course, the Colts, they wanted Andrew Luck to resurrect from the grave. And they had a problem with it, and then the two sides went different ways. He is 27 years old. However, the thing that's odd about this with the Steelers, this guy, I mean, he really, 2018 had a really good year, 66 receptions, 750 yards, and 13 touchdowns, which I'm sure the Steelers are hoping he'll regain that form. But last year, he dropped 5 passes, and he really did not make an impact. Only 31 receptions, 375 yards in the 12 games that he played in, despite Frank Reich trying to get him more involved in the offense. I mean, I don't consider this to be a huge kind of thing, I just look at it as a need for that team. We've got tight ends now. We know the Ravens have tight ends, and now the Steelers at least got somebody who is an experienced hand.
But you also have to remember that Roethlisberger is coming back to be the starting quarterback. So he will elevate whoever the tight end is playing tight end. Their stats are going to be much better than what they were this past season.
The other thing that was strange is the Ravens and the Steelers completing a trade where the Ravens sent Chris Wormley, who is a defensive end, I think, and a pick, a very low pick in 2021, in exchange for a 2021 5th-round pick. I mean, very unusual for these two teams to do business, but.
Well, the Ravens lost Michael Pierce to the Vikings too, their defensive tackle.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, and these are all bodies. I don't think anybody thinks that Chris Wormley is the answer to. He's 26 years old. He had 33 tackles, 1.5 sacks, but he wasn't really playing that many snaps with a pretty dominant group of people in Baltimore. So, the Ravens have done a lot. They traded for Clay Campbell and Michael Brockers, so he was expendable. So they just moved up in the 2021 draft with 2 rounds, in essence, and that's what that amounts to. The notion of Todd Gurley, I mean, how quickly they come and they go in the league. And this is just another indication of running backs got to get it while the getting's good. I mean, anybody on our panel surprised that, he got picked up by the Falcons, but was anybody surprised that they just shipped him off like that?
Yeah. I think every team realizes now that you don't need a top running back to win a championship. Look at the Chiefs. I mean, Damian Williams and LaShawn broken down McCoy.
Yeah, Saquon Barkley is the top pick. You know, again, you start looking at things, and there are so many components to the game of football that if you don't have a quarterback and you don't have an offensive line protecting that quarterback, and you know now, I mean, we have a form of the zone blocking scheme that of course Shanahan, the senior Shanahan, was an architect of, that makes running backs who are okay. What was your guy, Tony, in last year in Minnesota? The fullback, Ham, was that his name?
Oh, C.J. Ham, yeah. The fullback just got a nice contract because he looked pretty good last year.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of an interesting thing. I mean, running backs can
Although
be
I gotta say, I still miss Kleinsasser just for his name.
Oh, God, big Jimmy Kleinsasser.
Yeah, the big tree stump. But and your other running back in Minnesota, Tony, was not a big name guy, right?
Dalvin Cook.
You're right.
He was like a.
Oh no,
he was a first round pick. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Right.
I want to say that he got picked in the top 7
Yeah, he was
for
top.
his draft class.
Yep.
I think you mean McKinnon. He was the one that came out of nowhere.
Yeah,
As a
okay.
backup.
McKinnon, yeah.
Oh no,
He was the,
Alexander Madison was
Yeah,
last year's. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen
president.
it over and over where the zone blocking scheme really has promoted running backs who, if they
Let me shit. Look at the Niners. Who in the fuck is Raheem Mostert?
right,
And he looked like
He
a
was
fucking-
cut by the fucking Browns.
He looked like Barry goddamn Sanders for the last weeks of the season.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's why you're not going to be seeing too many more Saquon Barkleys. And no rap on Saquon Barkley, fine running back. And we were fortunate, we waited and we got Nick Chubb, and Nick Chubb is everything you could want.
And speaking of Nick Chubb and Gurley were actually teammates on the same Georgia team at one
That's
point.
right.
And it was Gurley's injury that allowed Nick Chubb to go off and become Nick Chubb at Georgia. He ran for like 800 yards that year.
The next thing I really wanted to jump on, boy, and again, it's how things change in the league. Jameis Winston and Cam Newton, okay? I mean, one was Superman and the other one was Mr. Crabclaw. But the bottom line was they both won Heisman trophies. They both led their colleges big time. Cam Newton was considered the poster child of young quarterbacks when he first came into the league because of his ability to throw and run the football, and had that Super Bowl appearance, and everything looked like it was going to go great. Jameis Winston playing in a Tampa Bay environment that was close to where he went to college, never really. I mean, there are some numbers that he put up, but he never showed the consistency. But both men, as of this hour, are unemployed. Does that surprise anybody on the panel?
Not with Cam Newton because his shoulder is shot.
All right.
I think Cam will find a job easily, though.
As a backup, but he'll never be a starter.
I mean, do you realize? I mean, it's really unusual what I'm, reading about. They're talking about likely landing spots. Okay, Cam Newton's not a free agent. He has 1 year remaining at $18.6 million. That's holding up things for him too. It's not doing him any good.
At this point, that's a bargain.
Yeah, I know. It's.
I bet he gets traded in New England.
I think he'll end up there and probably play next year in New England, yeah.
I mean, get this. The LA Chargers lost Phillip Rivers and Old Man Rivers, right? And, Tyrod Taylor is the number one quarterback. You can't go into a season with Tyrod Taylor as your number one quarterback. I think we found that out.
Although we did.
I know. I think we found that out,
For
they're
2.5
somebody.
games we did.
Yeah.
Exhibit A.
But, I mean...
I heard they're going after that Oregon kid.
Herbert.
And what's his name?
Justin Herbert. Yep.
Good luck
mean-
with that.
You mean
He'll be there if they
Stevie,
want him.
You mean Stevie Winwood? Oh, you said Oregon. I thought you said Oregon. I'm sorry. It's an old classic rock joke that is stale and should just go away. Yeah, well, I mean, I can't imagine the Chargers. I mean, if they're going to stick it out with Tyrod Taylor for an entire season, good fucking luck.
But you're seeing why, and I've been screaming this for a couple days, why Minnesota gave Kirk Cousins a contract extension.
Yeah, I get it, Tony. Kirk Cousins is, again, it's
Not a great quarterback by any stretch.
Case Keenum. He's better than Case Keenum, but he is a 500 guy. He's a guy who can, he's kind of like Ryan Fitzpatrick kind of guy, except in a different way. He can shepherd you to X number of wins, but it is an acknowledgement when you sign him for a couple of years that you're really not planning on going anywhere. Specifically, but it isn't like turning it over to Tyrod Taylor and having the whole thing just blow up in front of you,
I really think we're just tanking for Trevor Lawrence anyways. So.
Roxanne, are you trying to impress people with your Google skills again? That is so misleading.
I figured she Googled it. I figured she
I'm an
Googled
expert
that.
Googler. What can I say? I am fast with the fingers.
No comment. Okay.
Lady Gaga is like,
No and slow. That is the tempo.
But
Speaking of single-ply toilet paper.
But I agree with you, Tony. I mean, better stability than just blowing it up and turning it over to somebody who, doesn't know what in the hell they're doing. The thing that surprises me is all of these teams that they're talking about. The Broncos are committed to Drew Lock, who's really 3-8 since he came there. Okay.
they released Flacco too, didn't they?
Yep.
Yes, they just bounced him.
I
The
think
Jaguars-
Flacco's retiring. I don't think he'll be a backup.
I mean, Foles is gone from the Jaguars to the Bears. I mean, now Minshew is in the driver's seat, and that's really freaking scary.
So what is going to happen with the superstar from Mentor and Mitch Trubisky?
See you bye.
I'll tell you, Foles, again,
He's gonna
made
go the
his
way
name
of-
being a backup quarterback. That's what he did. And I mean, a good football player playing for a lousy organization. Everybody's going to look worse playing in Jacksonville than they, you got to pay him big to come there. And Foles is probably the happiest man in the world that he's the hell out of there. But Foles and Trubisky, Foles is a better quarterback than Trubisky. But again, age-wise, there's But Jacksonville didn't pay out $30.5 million, basically, or whatever they paid him for, to sit on the bench behind Trubisky. I mean,
Right.
Jacksonville, on the other hand, that was they who paid the $30.5 million for Foles and got rid of him after one season. Minshew made $685,000. The Dolphins have Ryan Fitzpatrick. And they're trying, and they're still mulling over, Tua over there at Alabama, who's got the complicated hip situation,
Yeah.
What do you do if you're the Dolphins and you really, because of this goddamn virus, you can't go and evaluate the quarterback that you're interested in? It's, but. So that could be a
I think
landing spot.
if they do decide to keep Rosenstein, they could actually sit Tua for one full season and let him completely heal from his injury and learn whatever offense they attempt to run down there.
I mean, the Washington Redskins have Dwayne Haskins, who has not yet proven that he's much more than Cardale Jones, all right? He likes to throw the ball down the field, but he's an equal opportunity thrower to the defense and the offense.
Yeah, but I kind of blame that on the Jake Gruden fiasco offense.
Ron Rivera is coming, and that's where Newton played. I'm wondering if Rivera is trying to escape Cam Newton, though. But that's a possible landing spot, you know? So it isn't like these men have a great list of options.
they had two quarterbacks have the same broken leg injury in the same season. I don't think Cam Newton is looking at that going, oh yeah, let's sacrifice my legs. The one good thing I got left.
Yeah,
he's not been the same since that heavily sprained ankle and dirty shot by Von Miller on Thursday night. He was knocked out cold, and he's not been the same since.
Yeah.
His injury issue started in the San Francisco game the year following the Super Bowl run.
Yeah, okay, it was against San Fran. I just know he was beat up and knocked out pretty much for a minute. But he kept playing on the injury and never recovered.
The next thing I wanted to cover with the panel's help is Tom Brady going to the Buccaneers. And the last great quarterback from the Buccaneers was
Trent Dilfer.
I would have said Doug Williams. At least they got him to a Super Bowl.
They've never
had
No. They went to the Doug Williams got them to the NFC Championship game. They lost to the Rams in the NFC Championship game.
I mean, individual seasons they had, but they've never had a franchise quarterback. And of course, now I don't think anybody's going to call Tom Brady a franchise quarterback because he's 42 years old.
Hey, wouldn't it be great if he duplicated Testicle Verde's interception rate? That would be awesome.
No, what would be awesome, he says that he's hungry coming to Tampa Bay, which is great because they have a lot of all-you-can-eat sushi places. I don't know if I would be hungry, and why the Buccaneers, I mean, unless they're desperate to put butts in the seats, does anybody on this panel believe that Tom Brady is going to have the magic to get this franchise turned around? We'll start with...
but look at what
Brian, apparently.
Look what Arians did with Carson Palmer here with the Cardinals. He basically kind of resurrected his career a little bit. He did get hurt a lot, but he was able to put up really good stats in the games he was able to play.
Maybe I should refine the question, and we'll start with Rick. Rick, you got a 42-year-old guy who's been doing things one way for his entire career. All right, now you're going to move him to Tampa with Bruce Arians, and you're going to tell him to run with a bunch of players that he's never run with before. And the fact of the matter is, he's replacing a very mobile quarterback in Jameis Winston, who was able to at least get out of the way of pressure that was coming at him like crazy from the Tampa Bay defensive or offensive line. I mean, do you see this? I mean, early in the season, do you see this working?
I think Arians can make it work. By the way, it's tradition, I think, that old people from New England always wind up going to Florida anyway. So, so this was probably a natural. Arians, all he has to do for Tom, I think, is just point over there and say, "I've got receivers." You know, Mike Evans. You know, those guys. I think Tom would enjoy that. I think I guess he did sign a 2-year deal, so you might want to be reminded about that second year when he's got to play 17 games. Hope they bring that up to him. But I think Tom can fit in down there. Like I said, I think he's going to have a few more weapons than what he had up there with New England. He had Julie Edelman, then a wing and a prayer. I think he's got better receivers down in Tampa Bay. Heck, if Winston can hit him, then he should be able to
But with this whole virus thing, the lack of preparation that he's going to have hitting.
Yeah, he's 42 years old, for God's sake. Like,
yeah, I mean, yeah, and Tony will switch over to you. I mean, the thing that is of concern to me is what was of concern about the Browns, without even being concerned about Freddie Kitchens' incapacity as a head coach. It was the whole thing with Monken coming on board, having to start a whole new offense, and you're trying to protect players in the preseason. Don't you think they have this much money? I mean, the amount of money they paid him is just obscene. I mean, a 2-year, $50 million deal that's all guaranteed. Do you think that they're going to run him out there in the preseason and expose him to anything?
no. No, I'll tell you what this reminds me of, Moo. 2009. Was it 2009? But borrowing then. A young, strapping lad in Green Bay came up. Aaron Rodgers. The Packers traded Brett Favre to the Jets. And the rest is history. I think this is going to be Brett Favre, New York, all over again. Without the, oh, look, Brett Favre goes to Minnesota and has his best statistical career to end his career. But, yeah, it's going to be a complete and utter disaster.
I mean, it isn't like, first of all, the Buccaneers were horrible defensively, gave up far too many points that would put way too much pressure on any quarterback playing from behind like that. So there's concern about that. Jake, what do you think? I mean, Tom Brady coming in maybe with less preparation and less preseason playing time. Is the name good enough to turn around a franchise that is lacking in other areas?
I don't think so right now, because if you look at Brady's skill set, it is the farthest thing from having a system where he throws the ball deep and he throws it often. I don't think you want to have him with receivers who like downfield routes right now. There's a reason he hid his declining ability in New England by throwing it short. Arians throws it deep a lot. Same offense the Browns ran last year. So I don't like this offense for him at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be an interesting thing. Me personally, I have nothing against Tom Brady if you can get $50 million all guaranteed up front when you're 42 years of age again. I mean, that's a... But with what we're staring down in the markets today, that's real money and spends real good. And I'm not avoiding you, Rox. You get your opinion on Tom Brady.
Well, Arians does have a reputation for having close relationships with quarterbacks, and so I think it just depends on if Brady is able to check his ego with that big of a reputation that he's coming with in 42 years of age. Will he be open to the guidance that Arians will provide? That's going to be the key.
Well, I mean, Arians to me when he was in Cleveland was not a 4-deep guy. This is not the air raid Arians, that I recall. I don't know, but Tom Brady can't play that system anyway. He doesn't have the arm left, nor is he going to have the time. The reason that Jameis Winston had the problems that he had partly were because of Jameis Winston and decision making, but he was being flushed on virtually every opportunity because they were constantly not holding the opposition. And Tom Brady is not in a position where he's going to be able to consistently win 38 to 35 types of games. That's not, and a first year, and I always talk about the first 4 weeks in a new system. He's a bright guy. We know that he can adjust, but it's the speed of the rush coming at him at 42 years of age and his reflexes to read and get out of a pocket. At least you saw him try to run the one time last year and it was Lord Chariots of Fire. It was slow. I don't think that he's going to be, he's not going to buy any time back there, that's for sure. So,
it's not in the cupcake division anymore either. No Buffalo, no Miami,
That's a good point.
no New York Jets. He's got to face Drew Brees. Of course, Matt Ryan's probably sitting, lying under a table, fetal position because he found out Brady's over there. But
well, everybody, it's top of the hour, 7:00.
Oh wow, that went by fast.
Yeah, it does. And
Zoomed.
I'm going to go walk my doggy. But I want everybody on the panel and everyone out there who's watching the program to be smart. And, to end the way it began, sometimes the sacrifices that we make are for others. And, there's plenty of years to party. There's plenty of times to get together in crowds. There's plenty of rock concerts to see if we whip the virus. Let's give our science teams the opportunity, the chance to create a vaccine that will kill this damn thing. And then we can go back to some of the things that we really love doing. But don't go out in groups of people like that. Because if you acquire something and it doesn't affect you particularly hard, but you end up giving it to 10 more people, it's going to find its way to your mothers, your grandparents. It's going to find the weakest host that it can find, and it will claim lives. Let's start making the sacrifice today, not just on toilet paper and hand sanitizer, but in our personal lives to protect those people around us. And the last thing I'll say, I have a neighbor here, Paul, who I was talking to Paul's wife, and we were kind of trading stories about stuff we had and stuff we couldn't find. And I mentioned that couldn't find disinfectants. Now I don't need a disinfectant because we're not letting anybody in here. We're basically not letting strange people into the house. But with that said, if one of us got sick, we would need to disinfect the place. And Paul came over no more than 20 minutes after that conversation with some disinfectant. That's what neighbors are. Those are the people you're trying to protect, not just yourself, but others. We can start thinking big picture like that. America has a chance to get better and to get great again. It's all in sacrifice. Let's do our part. Thanks, everybody, for tuning into this edition of Moohead Radio. Back again on Monday, man. I'm a working cow, and we're going to talk more sports and whatever else comes up because the news keeps moving. Be safe, be smart, and I'll see you Monday. Until then, hasta la vista, Pastor Heads. Good night.
Yeah.